I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like. Welcome everybody to this I Mix What I Like Patreon live test part 2. Welcome everybody who's able to join me and us. Thank you first of all for being patrons, and thank you again for making it here. I just finished listening again. Shout out to Renee for the idea. But I just finished listening to this book here, Owned. E. Higgins. The book is called Owned. And in the book, it's largely centers around Glenn Greenwald and Matt Taibbi. Oh, and good, Kimberly. Thank you. Good. I'm glad you could make it. And thank you, King Ashe, if I'm saying that correctly, but thank you very much. But in this book by Higgins, E. Higgins, they talk about Glenn Greenwald and Matt Taibbi are the centerpieces of from the perspective of, I guess, the progressive white left, how tech billionaires, Peter Thiel and others, basically purchased and took ownership over what were independent journalists at one point and dragged them to the right. And in the book, one of Glenn Greenwald's apparent nemesis is Taylor Lorenz, the journalist Taylor Lorenz. And I didn't know anything about this. Didn't know very much about her. He apparently, that is Greenwald, apparently took to targeting her a lot because she raised questions about his rightward slide politically. Well, it just so happens that this story that a number of people sent me, again, sticking to this new rule of 5, 5 independent requests for a review. Although I probably would have done this one off of just one because it overlaps with so much of the work that I'm interested in. It's a story of how the Democratic Party is now trying belatedly to play catch up with the right wing in targeting influencers for Democratic Party support. We've talked about it before. We've even shown how he's received this kind of funding before, but Roland Martin comes up again. And it just, I think, speaks to a lot of the problems that we continue to face in terms of an economic and electoral analyses, because what, again, is nominally Black, and this overlaps a lot with my interests around the Black capitalist narrative, buying power, etc., pop culture and celebrity, that a lot of what Brian Quoba talks about in his new book, that so much of what is targeted to Black audiences as the vanguard of Black thinking is sponsored, if not fully controlled, by elite white funders for largely the purpose of putting a liberal cap on any potential Black revolutionary political movement. From Wired magazine, a dark money group is secretly funding high-profile Democratic influencers. An initiative aimed at boosting Democrats online offers influencers up to $8,000 a month to push the party line. All they have to do is keep it secret and agree to restrictions on their content. Roland Martin is not mentioned specifically in this article, though I'll show you where he overlaps and comes into this. And I have no overt evidence that he has, how much he has taken and what he has actually signed on to do, although what I'll show you suggests that there is something there. But I thought about this obviously when we all ever have these discussions about what to do electorally, the pushback we get from Roland Martin and his crew, and those who are influenced by that argument, the personal attack is too strong a word, but the personal inappropriate criticism that I got from Greg Carr, all makes more sense or takes on a different context, or could be considered differently in light of stories like this. It makes more sense that they would be influenced in that direction at best, at minimum. So let's just look at a little bit of this story here. As Taylor Lorenz writes, in a private group chat in June, dozens of Democratic political influencers discussed whether to take advantage of an enticing opportunity. They were being offered $8,000 per month to take part in a secretive program aimed at bolstering Democratic messaging on the internet. The deal from Chorus, a nonprofit arm of the and liberal influencer marketing platform, and as we'll talk a little bit about, an extension of this 1630 funding project, mandated extensive secrecy and had restrictions on what sort of political content the creator could produce.
Message.
I'll let you read the entire article for more of the details and some of the and some of the influences that are involved in this. It's not the folks I've never heard of, though they have millions of followers on TikTok and elsewhere. So I'm just not familiar with the influencers themselves. Mostly younger, mostly white. But and different, obviously situated differently politically. I wouldn't be watching, But this initiative came after the Democrats lost in November, and they faced a reckoning. It was clear that the party had failed to successfully navigate the new media landscape, while Republicans spent decades building a powerful, robust, independent media infrastructure, maximizing controversy to drive attention and maintaining tight relationships with creators despite their small disagreements with Trump. And as the article and the video that Lorenz does, that I'll also link, shows, the kind of what we had been talking about here a little bit over the last couple of years. I remember when Dr. Burrows had me read Meme Wars, which talked about the Republican use of memes and social media long before. But Lorenz talks about this is an extension of the right wing taking dominance over talk radio back in the 90s and 2000s. And that's what Air America was, a liberal attempt to negate back in, again, the 2000s, but they were already behind. And then if folks read Barrett Brown's book and follow his work, the explosion of the right on the internet and 4chan and all those spaces, the right wing is far more advanced, and has had a lot more to do with even the election of Donald Trump than the liberals and even some progressives want to acknowledge. So this article in Lorenz's video talks a little bit about that. But this effort here with Chorus and the 1630 group was an effort to try to come back, to play catch up a little bit. Oh, and this guy's important. I've actually seen some of his videos. They've actually come up on my YouTube algorithm. High quality liberal content creator, Brian Tyler Cohen, who has 4.6 million subscribers. He is the founder, or co-founder of Chorus, with Stuart Perlmutter, the former communications director and representative for John Yarmouth of Kentucky. Seeing an opportunity after Kamala Harris's loss last November, Perlmutter co-founded Chorus with Democratic influencer Brian Tyler Cohen. All right, so this is the group that is a subset of this 1630 fund that is looking to organize and promote Democratic Party candidates using social media influencers. Right? And they're offering up to $8,000 a month for secrecy and getting you on message. And as they talk about in here, the part of the goal, as I'm going to show you in a minute, Brian Tyler Cohen's argument is that they need to get uniform messaging. They have to have fast response agreement on narrative creation, all to promote Democratic Party nominees. While the Republicans spent decades building a powerful and robust independent media infrastructure, maximizing controversy to drive attention and maintaining tight relationships, The Democrats have largely relied on outdated strategies and traditional media to get their message out. So they're seen as behind, and that's what this effort is meant to deal with. The goal of Chorus is to according to fundraising deck obtained by Wired, is to build a new infrastructure to fund independent progressive voices online at scale. The creators who join the incubator are expected to attend regular advocacy trainings and daily messaging check-ins. Those messaging check-ins are led by Cohen on rapid response days. The creators also have to attend at least 2 Chorus newsroom events per month, which are events Chorus plans often with lawmakers.
Message.
An assistant professor, Elizabeth Dubois, the University of Ottawa, who has researched the ways influencers are reshaping the US political system, says we are seeing influencers being pulled into these dark campaigns or shadow campaigns where the legal aspect is murky at best. Don Hyder, the chief executive of Makula Center for Applied Ethics at Santa Clara University, says the outlined restrictions violate ethical norms. If the contract for getting money from a particular interest group says you can't disclose it, then it's pretty simple. You can't take the money. Now, as it pertains to Roland Martin, what I'm going to show you suggests that he is disclosing it, at least a relationship. So maybe and unless I've missed something, maybe he's disclosed more. But the point being that this is the effort that whether it's Roland Martin or not, that this is the effort that is meant to manipulate and influence so much of the social media landscape that would make the work for many of us who want something different and left of the Democratic Party electorally and otherwise are going to have to struggle against. What I don't understand is why you wouldn't just donate to creators directly who have already built something and just need to put gasoline on the fire, says Edwards, who was one of the people, Keith Edwards was one of the people, Lorenz interviews that rejected the money and said, I don't want to do it. And Lorenz talks about a couple of those people who said, I'm not signing on to this. And she also talks about, I actually reached out to Lorenz to ask to see if I could get some help clarifying a couple of things. Because during the video, she talks about how Chorus misused people's images in the promotion. And so when I show you in a moment and it's actually at a part where, as I'll show you, where Roland Martin's image is shown. So I wanted to verify with her that she was or was not talking about him, and I haven't heard back yet. We'll see what happens. But I found some other things that would suggest again that he is fine with the. And then Stephen Buckley, a digital media sociologist in London, says that the 1630 fund raises the questions: is it ethical to match the tactics of your opponent? Democrats missed the next generation of media, says Brendan Gahan, co-founder of influencer marketing agency Creator Authority. Historically, they owned Hollywood, but this next generation of influence is digital, and they've miscalculated that. I don't think they feel comfortable in arenas where they lack control. And I think that is an interesting point, that maybe one of the reasons why the Democrats have had such a hard time lately with Trump in particular is that there is this suggestion that because they have Hollywood and a lot of the liberal media that they so-called that they can overcome what's going on, but they're not paying enough attention to what's happening in the social media universe, which is where many more are getting their influence from, and they're being undermined in a number of different spaces. That is the Democratic Party goals. So they're trying again to quickly play some catch up. So anyway, so this is in part how the dark money is meant to be used. This is Brian Tyler Cohen here. I don't know these 3 folks. And you see some more of the influencers here, but there's not much info here. So you can't really, this is a nonprofit incubator learning community for pro democracy creators. We host weekly technical trainings, but there's not much in terms of the ownership of this beyond it being this guy and, as I said, his co-founder. And then where does the money come from? It's not entirely clear to me yet, at least. But part of it is Act Blue, which I'll show you something here. All right, I'll show you this part here, and again, you can watch the video. I'll leave the link when. But I've basically gone over the headlines as far as I was concerned about what the story is about, and then there's a lot of other details. But you see here's Roland Martin. Yes, and Mary W, you're right. I would argue that you're right, at least that this a lot of this has to do with the dark money being used to suppress pro-Palestinian, anti-Israel content. But I think more broadly, it's meant to suppress all forms of political radicalism. It's that would be included, certainly. Anti-Zionist positions, pro-Palestinian positions would be included, but I think it's meant to suppress any form of actual radical analysis and argumentation, and is really meant to put a Democratic Party lid on it. And Taylor Lorenz does, I think, a good job of raising this as a point, that she's saying that a lot of this is about. She mentions a suppression of a criticism of capitalism and the like, but it's about buying up journalism, buying up influence. It's about limiting and narrowing the analysis and the perspective that we're allowed to consider. It's about assuring that, and this is why I did raise that even when I get, called out by Dr. Carr or someone else gets diminished or some other ideas, that it is about saying, anything left of the Democratic Party is inappropriate. And so on the one hand, Dr. Carr will call me out and talk about what my salary spoils me and allows me to argue immaturely, calling for something left of the Democratic Party. But but this is more like his boss, Roland Martin, taking money and being encouraged to limit the range of discussion and analysis, and to definitely cut it off at the Democratic Party, to say anything left of that is inappropriate, to set that edge, so to speak. So yeah, okay, so good. We cleared that up, but here's Roland Martin. And then when I was looking to see what else I could find that would maybe suggest his involvement, I did find this here. And again, I'll put all these links in the description once this gets edited and reposted. This is a post on Facebook from We the People, February 8th of this year. Brian Taylor Cohen, that's the BTC that we're talking about here, leads collective of progressive creators with a plan to take back the internet from Joe Rogan and the right wing machine. Right, because that's also part of it. They need a left wing Joe Rogan. And so you see Brian Tyler Cohen and then some others. And then here you see Roland Martin's name is listed. And then you see that the donation button, there's Act Blue. And I've been talking about them for a couple of years now as being, they spend billions of dollars to promote, and we've shown how they funded Roland in the past. But they spend billions in these election cycles to make sure that the Democratic Party is seen as the only viable option. I don't know what this says about the extent of his contract or whatever, but here's Brian Tyler Cohen. This is Roland Martin's YouTube page, 1.84 million. Oh, you can't see that because I'm in the way here. Hold on, just so you can see the point I'm making here. So you can see that there. It's 1.84 million. And then check this out. You can hear "Power to the People" starts with chorus. So he's got the fist and everything. So if you see there below me, 1.84 million subscribers, the fist there, "Power to the People" starts with chorus, says the video.
I've been beating the drum about growing the progressive media ecosystem for years now. We've finally got an exciting update. I'm part of a team of creators that's created Chorus Media. Chorus is a creator-led group of voices from the left coming together to scale up, drive the conversation online, and try and rebalance the massive disparity at play on the left and the right. So here's the deal. Chorus is going to support left-wing creators in a bunch of tangible ways, funding editors and researchers and bookers, helping creators who are established on one platform make sure they've got a presence on the others, and coordinating our messaging. Now, for me specifically, I'm not going to accept any funding. That money needs to go to new creators and the folks who can help them grow, but I'll be focused on message coordination. It has felt for the last decade like Republicans head into a morning meeting to get aligned on messaging. That disparity goes away now. If you'd like to support our efforts financially, that would be appreciated. You can click the link in the link tree in my bio. But otherwise, we can all play a role by supporting progressive creators on all platforms and helping us build out our infrastructure.
So there's the coordinated messaging that you would need. I mean, there it is right there. You got to be on message. And Roland is signing off on that. And as we played before, if you remember, during the election, we showed you how he happily that is Roland Martin, said, "Of course, I'm taking money from the Democratic Party to support Kamala Harris. Why wouldn't I do that?" He said. And yes, Mary, exactly. Why wouldn't you take money from a political party that is sponsoring the Holocaust in Palestine, the slaughter of DRC, and the genocide in Sudan? Why wouldn't I? Exactly. Because, Mary, you're missing the point. The point is to get a black woman elected. Or Roland's point, and this is something, actually, Mary, thank you. This is actually a good segue, because one of the things that I did want to share is this is an LA Times story of a couple years ago, January of 2022. Roland Martin believes in black-owned media, and he's using his own money to prove it. So if your goal, as Roland Martin has, and I think a lot of the black press has done a version of this. Roland Martin has built his career and the more recent part of his career around the idea that there needs to be a black independent press. And he's right. That is correct. The form politically that press takes, obviously we don't agree on and should be, obviously talked more about. But his point is that and his focus is on not only saying that there needs to be a black independent press, but that he is that black independent press, the only and the biggest and the soul and this and that, and that being his primary goal, not necessarily the political work of that, at least not beyond the Democratic Party or mainstream sort of liberal black politics. That being his primary goal allows him to say, absolutely, I'll take money. I'm not worried about a Holocaust among Palestinians. I'm not worried about a genocide in Sudan. I'm not worried about whatever. And I'm not worried about a critique of capitalism. I'm not worried about I'm not interested in any of that. I'm only interested in building a black independent, what I'm calling a black independent press that allows him to do, and I think justify and have no problem with. I mean, over the years, I've been critical of a number of, the McDonald's money, the John Hope Bryant financial literacy money, the Pepsi, and as I'll show you here, I mean, we don't have to belabor the point with this story, but this is his whole goal here. This whole story is talking about he's going to be the new Tom Joyner, which is in itself deserves a whole level of other discussion. A staunch defender of Obama, of course, but what I thought was the main point here is this: major advertisers have signed on, and this is when he's talking about having, and this is something he and I have had backs and forths about on social media, where Roland Martin, one of his fallback is to say he's bigger than I or we at Black Liberation Media are. He's the biggest, the best. And one of my points has always been, but you've had the head start of being in commercial media for decades. Of course you're going to be more popular. And he would always deny that had anything to do with anything. But this whole story is him talking about, and is the LA Times. I'm going to show you another one where they're praising Roland Martin, saying, I used CNN to build up my own business. I used my time at TV One to build up my own independent operation. And even in terms of getting equipment, getting them to basically buy media, camera and switcher and all that other kind of stuff, equipment. But the real point though here is that, quote, major advertisers have signed on. This is again him talking about his move to his independent current on, YouTube, Roland Martin Unfiltered show. Major advertisers have signed on, including Procter and Gamble, the biggest, by the way, that is the biggest ad buyer in the country, if not the world. General Motors, Verizon, Target, and Coca-Cola. He's on track to take in $3.5 million in revenue this year, up from $3 million in 2021. So what does that say? By the way, if we need more clarity on that, advertising determines content. So whether it's Chorus and Act Blue and the 1630 Project or Fund, it's the dominant advertisers that are saying, look, this is not a problem here. From CNN contributor, to my previous point, to digital powerhouse, how Roland Martin built a top 100 YouTube news empire. This is from just earlier this month of 2025 in Forbes magazine. The long story short is just what I was talking about, that he's talking about his time at CNN as a CEO of his own operation. He was leveraging an international platform to build his enterprise. Right. So that was exactly, I mean, so he's being praised in Forbes magazine for doing exactly what I said he was doing. And while he was basically telling me I didn't know what I was talking about and saying it had nothing to do with it, there it is. And then, as he said in 2009, after being denied a weekend show, he instantly decided CNN is now about to become my personal venture capitalist. With what I'm paid by CNN, they're about to fund what I'm going to be doing be doing in a decade. He began purchasing his own studio equipment while still on their payroll. And again, I'm not mad at that per se. I'm not mad at him doing that. I would think I would do something similar if I was in a similar situation by a you know and but my point is you're on an international platform being exposed to the world on a regular basis, and in addition to the exposure and the popularity, you are also you're getting a sizable paycheck, and then even more so, to his point, you're basically getting your whole operation funded. Longer story short, he does the same thing with News One, more or less. Wants to step in for Tom Joyner, which again I think deserves more attention. I'm giving it here. Martin admits that the whole media ecosystem is dependent on advertising dollars, yet they remain scarce for Black-owned media. Anyway, that was just my point there. That he built this so-called independent media operation while working in the most popular commercial spaces, and then bringing that advertising with him. So, and again, advertising doesn't care whether you're working on CNN, News One, or Roland Martin Unfiltered. They don't care. The content that they're managing through the ad dollars you want, that's that's what they care about. They don't care if you're a Black worker or TV host for CNN, or you're the so-called CEO of your own independent operation. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're Black. It doesn't matter if you're white. It doesn't matter what your sexual orientation or gender is. It doesn't matter anything. What matters is, are you going to toe the line of advertisers? Or in the case of Chorus and the 1630 Fund, are you going to toe that political line of making sure that nothing left of the Democratic Party is ever considered? And just to show you a little bit, this is the 1630 Fund from Influence Watch, President Amy Kurtz. So there's a lot more that I and others could follow up on in terms of all the incestuous relationships. But what I ended up highlighting, I just scrolled and scanned through this, is that again, the dark money funding, after decrying big Republican donors, after decrying big money Republican donors over the last decade, as well as Supreme Court rulings that flooded politics with more cash, Democrats now benefit from hundreds of millions of dollars of undisclosed donations as well. And then they just go through that same hand wringing that Lorenz was talking about in her article. Should we be doing what the Republicans are doing? Is this ethical? What is the da, 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 da? And the short of it is, yeah, it's ethical. Let's get some money into these into funding some PACs and some. I looked up the Black PAC here, but the point is they just to promote Democratic Party candidates to Black audiences. That's really the point. And it has all this Blackness on it, but then it just says these are the people you should be voting for. Defend the Democratic Party, fight Trump, and it's a nominally Black organization, but it's again all being funded, or at least not all being funded, but funded in 2020 at least to $2.25 million. I mean, and they spent a grand total of 43, almost $43.5 million in 2020. And then the other thing I thought was interesting as I looked through this was that what I did notice about all of and there's all kinds of seemingly scandalousness with this Arabella group that runs this thing, but um, in 2020, the 1630 Fund was the second largest giver to super PACs in the entire country. The first was One Nation, a right-wing organization. The 1630 Fund gave $61 million to super PACs. They've scaled up at a speed that is unprecedented. They got an illegal intervention complaint in 2021 that hasn't seemed to slow them down. But the other thing that I noticed is that, okay, so the leadership, Eric Kessler, former Clinton administration, Amy Kurtz, who is now the president, comes out of the NEA and, liberal nonprofits and the Arabella Group itself. She was a senior advisor at America Votes, a left-wing Get Out the Vote nonprofit heavily funded by 1630 and other Arabella-run nonprofits. On the board of directors, Raul Alvilar, executive vice president of Resolute, a public relations and communications firm that's a PR, psychological warfare, mass communication, manipulation, propaganda. A former New Mexico state director for Joe Biden's 2020 presidential campaign. Served as the national political director for the Democratic National Committee, political director for Barack Obama's presidential campaigns, Office of Public Engagement for Obama, Douglas Hathaway, the board secretary, Democratic Party consultant, president of Hathaway Communications, again, PR. Hathaway has worked as a spokesman and communication director for presidential campaigns for Hillary Clinton, Tom Daschle, who, again, I only remember now because Obama got rid of Daschle because Daschle was like the last Democrat willing to talk somewhat about universal health care. Press secretary for Bill Clinton and Al Gore. So this is that again. So that's where all this is like a lot of it is coming from. At least and remember, where does the Clinton movement come from? The now probably rebranded Democratic Leadership Council that was the right wing of the Democratic Party that wanted to get some victories after the Reagan Revolution, and Bush won extension of that. So it is the most right wing of what is already a sadly, disturbingly conservative, so-called liberal wing of this country that is funding so much of the Black targeted media and influencing space and electoral space to get Black people and everyone else on brand, on message. As Brian Cohen was saying in the video on Roland's site, we got to get on message. We got to get on code. We got to have the same story. And part of that story is knock back anybody talking about anything left of the Democratic Party. And that has to be done in secret, that they don't want anybody talking about this. So again, Roland Martin might have that Brian Tyler Cohen video talking about, and he's got 3 of them. He's got the same one on there 3 times, but it's Cohen saying what I played for you. And and then he's in that list of chorus signed up influencers. And so, but I don't know that he can or has said or would be allowed to say publicly, I'm taking money from Chorus to promote the Democratic Party. He rebrands it as, of course I would take money to support Kamala Harris. I need money. I'm a Black independent press outlet. Advertising is king. I got Forbes magazine and the LA Times praising me for doing this. So clearly I'm on the right track. So don't criticize me, Mary. I don't want to talk about Zionism and be pro-Palestinian. And if my hired, correspondents, want to call out Jared Ball for supporting something left of the Democratic Party, that's what we're supposed to do. Mary, is Mary still in the chat? Mary, with your free Palestinian Black fisted flag. How dare you?
And what do you sacrifice?
Calm, kindness, kinship, love. I've given up all chance at inner peace. I made my mind a sunless space. I share my dreams with ghosts. I wake up every day to an equation I wrote 15 years ago for which there's only one conclusion. I'm damned for what I do. My anger, my ego, my unwillingness to yield, my eagerness to fight, that set me on a path from which there's no escape. I yearn to be a savior against injustice without contemplating the cost, and by the time I look down, it's no no longer any ground beneath my feet. What is my sacrifice? I'm condemned to use the tools of my enemy to defeat them. I burn my decency for someone else's future. I burn my life to make a sunrise that I know I'll never see. Now, the ego that started this fight will never have a mirror or an audience or the light of gratitude. So what do I sacrifice? Everything.
I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like.